here.
Yeah.
So, I don't have much structure, so don't worry, I'm not a teacher. So we could just kind of get to know each other and talk. I've got curriculum and stuff, but again, well, I'm Michelle Rager. You can also know me as Michelle Hooch. You can call me Michelle. I'm a member of the Cornerstone class here at Boston Avenue. I have a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old, and the 13-year-old is on spring break with her friends, and the 15-year-old is sleeping off a sleepover with his friends. They are not here this morning, but they helped me put this together, and they're a big part of why I believe the way I do, and why I continue to stay close to my faith is for them, and Boston Avenue is for them, and I know that this is a safe place for them, and I like the values instilled, and so we continue to come here. But I also serve as Development and Communications Director for Restore Hope Ministries. Y'all heard of Restore Hope?
Oh, yes.
We were just there the other day.
You were, that's why you're so familiar. Gosh, I've seen her somewhere, yes. So has anybody not heard of Restore Hope? Okay, good. We are a United Methodist urban ministry, and you all have heard of us and hopefully volunteered with us, and you're here to improve your serve. So I imagine you all are pretty service oriented already. I don't have to convince you that service is a good thing. Though when I was looking for resources going through the Bible, I found a couple passages that tell us that that is really what we should be doing. I'll quote one here in my research part. But in Matthew 20:28 and Mark 10:45, it says, "Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." And of course, that's talking more of ministry, but it's also service as a whole. And so if you think about that in your life, it's not just what are people doing for me? What can I achieve for myself? What do I need to be better and achieve more and make more money and have a more successful business? But what can I do for others? And so keeping that in mind first of how we are a servant to others and those around us. We are a community. We're not just one person trying to make the best of ourselves, but we're here for a purpose, and that purpose is to improve the life of other people. And so I think that's the core of service. Anybody else have ideas of service, or am I off course of what you think of service? Okay, good. But and part of that is we're here to improve your serve. So improve your serve means not just do more hours of volunteer work. Don't just donate more money. Don't check things off of a list. Don't sign up for more global mission trips. Improving your serve is about the mentality behind that serve. And that comes down to the greatest commandment. What is the greatest commandment? Do you guys know? It is from Matthew. It says, "Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord with your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." And of course, John goes into that a little bit more in depth and repeats it over and over. What does he say? Love one another, love one another, love one another, love one another. First John repeats it again, love your neighbors, love one another. And so that's central to service. It's just loving one another. And if we can do that in our daily lives and in everything we do, gosh, can you imagine like our world? If everybody was thinking about each other and those around them, and not just loving as, oh, I like you a lot, you're a great person, I just love you, but loving is action and doing what we can for others. Whether it's as simple as you're taking a walk down the sidewalk, you notice there's some broken glass, so you go home and you get your broom and dustpan, you sweep up that broken glass to love your neighbor so that nobody walks on that broken glass, or somebody walking their dog and they get their paw cut. You're loving one another. You might just avoid that glass, right? You can walk around it. You can say, it's not a problem, it's fine. The shop owner here will get that. I'll let them know that there's glass out here. Or you can just take care of it. And you can show that love to your neighbor in your daily practice. Even in your home, loving one another. It's hard. It's really hard. We all get under each other's skin sometimes, but coming back to that love one another and what's best for everyone in our house. It's not just about you. And who did something to you and how can we remedy that, but think about what we have done to and for others. And that becomes our service, and that is our action all the time. It's hard. That's why you're here. Again, it sounds so simple, just love one another, just help each other out, but we got to do it all the time. If we are really serving God, we are loving one another, and we are serving others every day. And we live in quite a divisive world, right? Has it ever not been divisive? I don't think so. That's something that we are always going to have to live with. But then y'all kind of nodded when I said if everybody loved one another, how would that change our divisive world? We can look at what we do in our homes. We can look at our service trips, but then we can even go into politics a little bit. And I'm not going to be a politician here at all, but we can look at some of the policies in place and keep that in mind of these policies that are being proposed for our legislature. And one is, why is this policy necessary? Obviously, people are not loving one another, that we have to put this policy in place to ensure people are taking care of one another. And the other, there are some policies that are just hurtful, that are really hurtful. And they might help people in economic ways or might help some people, but they really, when you look at them in the big picture, they are not loving one another. They are not godlike at all. And we need to really take a look at that. And we all play a role. We all vote, and we all can communicate with our legislators. And so you can reach out to them as Christians. You can reach out to them as Methodists. You can reach out to them as yourself. And, we are in kind of a religious state too, right? I mean, Oklahoma is pretty religious, but we also are pretty politically divided. And so I think that's a really good way to kind of look at these policies and what they're doing to people and how we can help people through that. It's not easy, it's hard, but is there anything wrong with loving one another? Can we come up with something that would hurt us? Okay, there is some way. That was a trick question. So there's this book, and you probably have heard of it, called When Helping Hurts. And there are ways that you can do service wrong. I know, it's hard. So sometimes we have a good heart and we think we're loving one another, but it can actually do harm to other people as well. One of the examples in that book is, I'm probably going to quote it completely wrong, but it's a group that goes out and does a mission trip in a foreign country, and they build a building while they're there. They do a construction job. Awesome, right? That's a pretty big project to do. But that's not what's needed in that community. And when that group goes away, they tear down that building, and then another group comes and builds a building and does their big construction project in this foreign country as their mission project. In those situations, the service isn't for the location. Though the people doing the mission work think it is, it's not really what they need. It's not really what's most helpful there. And if we would stop and listen to everybody, not just one person, not just the person in charge, but take a moment to listen to everybody, the people that we're helping, and take that into consideration when we are helping. Making sure you're donating the right things to people, making sure you're not overstepping as well. But come back to loving one another, and you're putting yourself in that person's perspective as well. And kind of thinking about how is this making a difference? Why are we doing this? And is it for me? Is it so I feel better? Or is it really going to change someone's life for the better? My kids have service hours that they're required to do for school. And I like that, but I don't like that, because I think that sometimes people get into service as the right thing to do for someone else, because they have to have so many hours. They need to check these off the list. We need 20 hours. So, where can I go? I need to volunteer. Can I do an hour? Okay, am I almost done? Is my hour up? Can I go home now? gosh, that kind of defeats the point, right? Maybe you get some work done, you bag some beans and some rice, and you've done a good thing, you've helped the food bank or Restore Hope or whatever, but it's missing the point of service. And so that's why I kind of don't really like that, but I try to do that in my own home with my kids. And on their service hours, I don't just count like organized volunteer activities, but things that they do in their community for others. And so if we're out and my child and we start picking up trash, I put that down on their service sheet as what they have done. And so it's more than that. It's not time checked off, but being part of a community. If they, helped out, we had a community fair and they came for a couple hours and they helped out. It wasn't a volunteer activity. They were being helpful. They weren't getting paid. They didn't have to be there. They chose to be there. That's the best kind of service. So that's where we come. It's, again, not for us, but it is for everyone else and is mostly for God. So at Restore Hope, y'all know what we do, right? We prevent homelessness, and how we do that is we provide a little bit of emergency rent and utility assistance so that we can help somebody get caught up on their rent so that they're not evicted. And that we have an agreement with the landlord that if they accept these funds, that they will not evict their tenant. We want to keep people in their home, right? And so it works. It works. And, we have over 20 years we've been providing emergency rent assistance, and we have a 99% effectiveness rate of keeping people in their home. 99% of the time we provide the assistance and they don't become homeless. And we have done that as quality over quantity for a very long time. It's changing a little bit, and I'm interested to see, but COVID hit. Y'all know what happened. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people needed help, so they didn't become homeless. A lot of, property owners were not getting rent paid to them because people couldn't. The money wasn't there. They didn't have it. They didn't have a job. They couldn't get a job. They were laid off. You can't get blood from a turnip, right? And so the federal government started the Emergency Rent Assistance Program. Huge program all throughout the country. We were talking about being on a cruise. I was in the Virgin Islands and there was a sign advertising this program on St. Thomas on a billboard. And so here in Oklahoma, it's Emergency Rent Assistance Program, or ERAP, and Restore Hope was selected to serve Northeast Oklahoma. So to put this into context of just how enormous this need is, in our biggest year, our annual budget was $1.2 million for everything: lights, maintenance, salaries, programs, everything. So far, we have spent $46 million just on emergency rent and utility assistance, right? It's hard to even fathom that. It's just so enormous. And so we've kind of expanded our team and been able to do that, but we're kind of leaking into that quantity over quality. And so COVID's kind of winding down, people are getting back on their feet. And so we're looking at moving forward. What is this program going to look like in the future? And that's where it gets hard. And so we come back to this love one another and what's most important in what we do. And we come back to the 10 standards at Restore Hope. And several years ago, before I even started there, and I've been there 8 years now, the staff put together the 10 standards for Restore Hope Ministries. And as you think about loving one another and service and action, and think about each of these standards, and does it meet that? Are we following Jesus's command, God's command, to love one another? So 1, be Christ-centered. Right. 2, be welcoming. Number 3, treat others with dignity. One way that we do that is in our food pantry. We have a food pantry of choice. So families don't just get a box of food we think they'll like. They get to choose the foods that they're going to eat for their family, or that their family is going to eat. Foods that they know how to cook, foods they're not allergic to, foods that meet their dietary needs. They can choose those. And so we're treating others with dignity in that way, and others too. Number 4, be compassionate. think about everybody who's coming as a person, just like every one of us, right? I was driving down the street and I saw a gentleman on the side of the road, clearly appeared as though he was unhoused. He was quite dirty. He had a cart with a lot of stuff in it. And so I'm putting all this together. You'd assume he's probably unhoused, homeless. But then I kind of, sitting at the stoplight, started to think and imagine he was not always like that. Back up, we don't know what happened in his life. I don't even know his name. I don't know where he was from or where he was going. But I imagine him as a young adult. Imagine him as a high school student. Imagine him as an elementary student running around on the playground with his friends, sitting at a desk with a teacher. And then imagine him as a little baby. Somebody birthed this person. Somebody held this person, changed their diapers, fed them with a bottle. That's no different from my children and myself and my family and each one of you. That's compassion, right? He's a person. He's not just a homeless. He is a person, and we need to be compassionate and keep that in mind with everybody. Number 5, be missional. So keeping that in mind, our mission at Restore Hope is to restore families in financial crisis to economic and spiritual vitality. We also have Christ's mission too, right? So that's in there. Number 6, meet people where they are. Don't make assumptions about what they should be doing, but help them move forward from where they are at that point. Number 7, help all in some way. Someone might come and might need clothing. A long time ago, we had a clothing closet at Restore Hope. We don't anymore. So if somebody comes for clothing, we don't have a clothing closet, but we don't just say, go away. We can't help you with clothes. We say, we do have a food pantry. Let's get you a little bit of groceries. With those groceries comes some hygiene items. We have soap and shampoo. You counted those, right? We give diapers and wipes if they want them. Again, these are all oh my goodness. These are all choices that they make. Just like they choose the food, they can choose these items to add to their grocery pack. And so, letting people know how we can help them, or even putting them in contact with the agency that can help them. And so making those referrals for them. Number 8, choose quality over quantity. I touched on that, right? And number 9, connect person to person. It's another challenge with serving 11,000 households versus a couple of hundred households. It's really difficult to do, but we have been working on improving that. We had a call center that just was not giving the best service, I guess, to those who were calling for help. And so we had to make a change, and we partnered with a different call center, and it has been an incredible difference because they have that mindset of person to person, communicating them, not just giving them a quick answer and getting rid of them so they can go to the next person on hold, but giving them the quality answer. And then number 10, be advocates for change. We talked a little bit about policies. And so keeping our ears open to what those policies are, being aware of what they are, telling other people about them, and voicing our concerns about those policies. Sometimes we have ideas that aren't yet a bill. They haven't been presented, but if we talk to our legislators about concerns we have, ideas we have, they can very well become a bill. And we have one right now that we've been advocating for some time, and it is improving landlord-tenant rights. The Landlord-Tenant Act for Oklahoma hasn't been updated since 1978. A lot has changed since then. What year is it? 2022. And so it's moving a little towards that. So instead of a cap of $100 that they can take off of their rent for repairs that their landlord doesn't make, it's increasing that to up to the cost of 1 month's rent, which makes sense. $100, I can't hire a handyman just to come to my house for $100, let alone do the repairs. So it just was unrealistic. Now, maybe back in 1978 or early 80s, something could happen for $100, but you can't anymore. I mean, I filled up my tank, it was $60 and I drive an Outback, It's like, it's just expensive. Everything's a little bit more expensive than it used to be. And so updating that, ensuring that there's not retaliation. And so there's a lot of good things going on. There's also another bill though, that's the opposite of that. It's not very loving. It's expediting the eviction process. So it's stating that if a judge orders an eviction, the person must be out immediately. The possession goes to the landlord. Currently, it's 48 hours, which isn't much time if you've been evicted to go home, collect your stuff. But this is saying once that gavel hits, and you're done. You're locked out. You can't go back and get your pets. You can't go back and get your kids or your family that might be there while you're in court. You're out. You're done. And essentially immediately homeless, right? And they say that with this bill, when that landlord has presented your notice of eviction prior to that court date, you should have had sufficient time to gather your things and get out of there before then. But gosh, that's not loving one another. First, to evict somebody who's having a really hard time in their life. Sure, maybe somebody's willingly not paying their rent, but most of the time they want to pay their rent. That's, priority number one. There's something going on and they need help. My ex-husband was in a terrible car accident when we were in our early 20s. We were renting a house and our landlord understood what was going on. They had their house paid off. They didn't need our rent payment. And so they said, you know what? Until your husband's back at work, don't worry about the rent. You take care of the other things that you need. You focus on getting better. Just don't pay that rent. And that is the most loving thing they could have possibly done in that situation. I still get chills to this day. To give that up, that was their revenue, right? That's their money. But it was our life. It was our home. And we had a baby. And, it's just doing those things, going a little above and beyond to help one another and coming back to love one another. That's the greatest service of all. And to do that for no reward whatsoever, except that God commanded us to do that. And it's the right thing to do. So a couple other passages I wanted to read. How much time do I have? Is this a 20-minute class or do we keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going as long as you guys want to go. Please feel free to voice anything if I say something that sounds weird or you have something to add, please feel free, everybody. Which one do I want? Okay, I'm not going to preach to you guys. I'm not a minister. I haven't been to seminary. I just studied sociology and public policy. And, I work in a charity and a United Methodist, and I've been a Methodist my whole life, but I'm not a preacher. But I do know how to read the Bible, and you guys do too, right? And so one of the passages about love that we probably hear a lot is in Corinthians. What is it? 1 Corinthians 13, every wedding you go to, don't they say that? And so, weddings were like, oh, love, falling in love. Love is wonderful. And we have that idea of that idea of love. But if we think about love in the big picture, now I'm going to read just part of that to you from 3 through 8 of that 1 Corinthians. And keep in mind love overarching and not just a husband and a wife or a husband and a husband or wife, whoever is getting married. And it says, if I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Does it mean a little different now? And ring a little different? And as we go, we're gonna continue thinking about that. The person who cuts us off in traffic, oh! But we don't know what's going on. Let's love them a little bit. They're distracted. We don't know what's happened, but something. So just be more loving in everything that we do. Do service to do it. Don't check it off a list. You don't even have to tell anybody when you do it. God knows. And that's the highest form of service. It's between you and God. He knows what's in your heart and he knows what you're doing. And it's not for reward. It's not for commendation or building your resume, getting a scholarship. It's loving one another and service in action. If we can do that, let's change the world. This is what's the United Methodist mission, right? Creating disciples of God for the transformation of the world. How can we do that? Through love and action and service. So I hope that improves your serve a little bit. Improve your serve through practice. Let's practice loving one another. I hope that has helped. Does anybody have any thoughts? Stories?
Store Hope income based to get the services? I forgot how you say it.
Well, for the Emergency Rent Assistance Program, there is an income cap for that, depending on the number of people in the household, and then that income is based or fluctuates for that.
I had a couple of neighbors who got evicted, but because of COVID couldn't be evicted in a sense.
Yes, the moratorium.
But they lost their jobs, and so their income was inflated in a sense on paper.
But if they had evidence that they had lost their job,
That's
they can
how-
provide that to show that they currently don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, in the long run, it worked out, but it was kind of confusing because
Oh, yeah.
there seems to be that period when people who are, have regular good jobs, income, and then all of a sudden they lose it.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe use up their savings, but on paper, sometimes they didn't qualify for things because of that. And I don't know what to call it, but that inflated salary that they had 3-6 months ago, they haven't had all this time.
Right. And that is hard. I mean, so much of our life is in contract, right? We've got these monthly payments we have to make. Even, gosh, my alarm system was a 36-month contract just to have an alarm system. So those are things that you cannot just stop paying when you lose your job. You can't just cut back a little bit. I can't just pay less on my car payment or less on my insurance or less on my rent, or you can't make those choices. They are set monthly payments. And so it's shocking.
Yeah.
And to figure out how to do that is so hard. And you're right, it's hard to qualify because on paper it looks like you've made a lot of money, but now you're not.
Unfortunately, in one of the cases, the person was mentally ill and the landlord could not get the person out and the person destroyed the home.
Oh, no.
So it was a catch circle.
Yeah.
And even if they got her committed, it would have only been for 72 hours. But I saw both sides,
Yes.
this woman who had a little girl and who was deteriorating mentally, and the landlord who was trying to be accommodating. But anyway, I won't say it was a happy ending, but everybody got what they needed, so to
Right.
speak. But
That's so hard.
there's so many people in the world who don't, because of everything that's going on, and even now with inflation and certain programs, which you're probably more aware of, are ending because of COVID.
Yes, and looking at how we can continue those on and adjust them, pivot and kind of downshift. Now, there are other programs that Restore Hope. All the other programs do not have an income requirement to them. The only reason this does is it's because the funding source tells us we can't use their money unless they're below a certain income. And so looking at those factors, but our
Yeah, I
food
agree.
pantry, we might in our interview ask what their income is, but it doesn't matter. We're gonna help them because we know maybe you had a very good income. You had a household income of 6 figures, but the main person got laid off, and now suddenly you're not able to make ends meet, and you find yourself going to Restore Hope for a little bit of groceries so that you can use that money that you do have to pay those bills that you can't get help with. And so our food pantry, our Thanksgiving basket program, which is a program of abundance, showing that there is enough for everybody. There really is. There's enough of everything for everybody if we just share it and love one another. And our school supply program. So those, we don't ask what the income of the parents are for the school supply program, just that they attend a public school within Tulsa County and have evidence of that child that is their child. And we will help them. It doesn't matter how much money they make or don't make for that program. So, but yeah, and it's hard. I used to do social work and resource coordination and trying to find those pieces for people, but there is a lot of love out there. There is a lot of help. It's just finding how those work together. And if we as neighbors help one another, it makes a big difference. You know, meal trains, fantastic. You know, that's something that someone doesn't have to worry about after they've lost a loved one or going through a hardship. Making sure they have food in their fridge and their freezer and taking that off their plate. Being neighborly to each other within your Sunday school class, your community, your neighbors on your street, your kids as friends, your friends, the lady down the street that you don't like, the guy up the street who doesn't like you. Try to keep that all in mind, that they are a community, they are children of God. And if we are truly Christians, we will love them in our hearts and in action. So I hope. There we go.